Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for today's session, Inclusion in the Trump Era, What's Next? I'm Shaima Al-Ghazali. I'm the Managing Editor at Diversity Resources. We're excited to dig into this conversation with you today, especially because so much has changed in the past few months. So I will pass it on to our president, Eric Toll, to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Shaima, and welcome everyone. Thank you for the great work that you do. I'm Eric Toll. I'm president of Diversity Resources. For a little bit of context, believe it or not, Diversity Resources has existed since 1992. We've been in business 35 years. We will be in business another 35 years. I have professionally been in the DEI arena since 1994. And personally, my first experience with wanting to be included was when we moved to a foreign country about 1 month before first grade. Had to learn the language, cultural immersion in a village of 800. And you know, this work is really important to me personally because I identify with at least 4 different diversity groups. As I already mentioned, I'm multicultural. I've lived in other countries, speak other languages, love culture. I'm neurodiverse, love that. I'm recovered from a disability. That wasn't so fun, but I'm grateful for that experience. And then I'm PFLAG. I'm the proud father of a gay son. So this work is super important to me. And here at Diversity Resources, we are fired up to continue the work and how to serve more people. And that's why we're here. Today, we're going to go through 5 different things. We're going to talk about what businesses are doing today. We're going to talk about the business benefit of inclusion. We're going to talk about the current developments with the administration. Perhaps one of the most important parts will be what you at your organization can do to protect yourself and avoid problems in the future. And then finally, we will talk about how we can help you. So number one, the great news is that most companies are staying the course. A recent study, bear with me 1 second, showed that 58% of companies are maintaining their DEI budgets. I think something like 18% have decreased, but 23% have actually increased. So this is for the United States. Within this country, more companies have increased spending than decreased it. Here are the statistics for you. You can also find a number of lovely blog posts on our website. Here we go. This article right here. This goes into further detail right here. And you will find this on our website here under Insights. Another incredible development, and this has just been gaining steam in recent days. I searched percentage of shareholders. Let's just Google this real quick. 98% DEI shareholders. I'd heard about one company. I think it might have been Goldman Sachs. Yep. I was looking for this Goldman Sachs statistics that 98% of their shareholders rejected anti-DEI efforts. However, what I was surprised to find is John Deere and Apple. We all know about Costco. And the most recent one that Shaima came across today, shareholders at Coca-Cola. 99% of their shareholders rejected efforts to undo DEI. So DEI is alive and well, and the people who own companies, the shareholders, and they want to maximize their return on investment. They're saying, let's stay the course with DEI. Now, one of the reasons that this is the case is because inclusion is really good for business. Another word for inclusion is being nice, being kind. And if you're nice to your customers, if you're nice to your employees, you're kind, it makes sense. You're just going to do better business-wise. And one of the most phenomenal this just came out this week. I believe this was an article in Fortune magazine. So thanks so much to them for their great writing. Costco and Target have had two different approaches to DEI in the recent months. Target, they're down 5 million visits. And more importantly, or not more importantly, but more important to the bottom line, they've lost $12.4 billion in market value. That's a huge hit. Of course, Target immediately reacted and dialed back their DEI efforts. Costco, in contrast, said we're going to stay the course. They've been rewarded with 7.7 more store visits. So, Costco and Target are slightly different approaches to retail in terms of what you could buy there. But this is a huge outcome where one company very publicly dialed back their efforts. They've seen traffic go way down. Another one stayed the course. They've seen traffic go way up. And why is that? Bear with me one second. We've recently launched a new sister company. We'll come back to this in just a moment. Right here are some extremely compelling statistics about the benefits of being inclusive. McKinsey reported a 35% higher financial performance at companies that are inclusive. Gallup measured a 17% increase in productivity. Deloitte, 22% decrease in turnover. These are just single studies by single organizations, but you will generally find that any type of study like this, and again, you will find more studies like this in the blog section of our website. Most companies, if they could find a 3 or 5% way to increase their financial performance, that would be huge. But we're talking about 35% boost in financial performance or 17% increase in productivity. So it's really good for business. And of course, there's also, the impact that and the long-lasting damage to brand reputation at companies like, Starbucks or Papa John's. I'm trying to recall the exact math with Papa John's, but the year before their infamous DEI incident, which involved the use of inappropriate language by the person whose name is in the company, they were growing about 20% a year. The year after that incident, they shrank 20%. So the impact on their business was actually 40% decrease in revenue. That's a huge impact. But on the other hand, being nice to people, being kind, being inclusive, this was one of the most lovely stories in the last week. Bear with me one second. Marriott's CEO, Anthony Capuano, sent out a company-wide message reaffirming Marriott's commitment to DEI. He received 40,000 emails from employees thanking him. That is resounding feedback from their employee base. When you get your employees on board, when they believe in your mission, you're just going to do better at business. Oh, and further, 65% of Americans, again, that's in this country. And it's important to recognize the United States is only 4% of the world's population. But within the United States, 65% of Americans support DEI efforts in the workplace, in schools, et cetera. So it remains very popular with Americans. 2 out of 3 Americans favor it. Shama, is there anything else you'd like to add on those two topics?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen through the news and everything going on that it's been pretty much fear mongering amongst the current state in the U.S. In this climate, though, how we talk about inclusion matters as much as what we do. We've seen organizations move away from certain DEI language, but that doesn't mean they're moving away from DEI itself. And it's not because they're abandoning inclusion, but because they're just being strategic. We've seen what's working is focusing on shared values, like respect, belonging, connection, and just being intentional and adaptable without watering down the message. So it's not, about playing it safe. It's just getting through and being heard about the current structure of DEI.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Shaima. And with that, we'll pivot to what you can do to protect your organization. One of the main things that organizations are doing is, and it just came out, I believe, in the last 24 hours. We're cheering Harvard in its current efforts to remain an independent educational organization, but they are rebranding the name of their DEI efforts of that office. I believe they named it something like Office of Campus Life. And that's one thing that a lot of our customers are doing, and that's one thing you'll see nationwide and worldwide. In fact, when Google made an announcement a few months ago, there was a bit of brouhaha about it. All they did was change their CDO's job title. She was Chief Diversity Officer. Now she is Chief of Engagement and Googler Belonging. Very similar words. And that's what we're seeing is a lot of organizations are dispersing. They're not all picking one new word to go to. People are choosing different names for that work, for that effort that resonates with their particular mission. So that is one thing that your organization should consider if you haven't already. Number one. Number two, when you are able to tie your inclusion efforts to a business bottom line outcome, like you have some evidence, like we've shown you, when you have some evidence that your efforts contribute to the business bottom line, that can provide you some legal protection in any situation that involving a state or the federal government. So that's huge. Tie it to your business bottom line. And one thing that organizations are doing is there's something very broadly called affinity groups. Organizations increasingly, rather than calling them ERGs, employee resource groups, are calling them BRGs. And there's a subtle difference, but BRGs are more tied to business outcome. So when you tie these efforts to a business outcome, it provides you with some legal protection. And on that topic, definitely stay in touch with your legal counsel on the latest efforts. It varies a lot. What country you're in. A lot of countries, happily, there's no impact in this. In fact, our next webinar will be on Europe and how Europe is taking some of the leadership in DEI worldwide. Some countries, there's no impact. The impact varies from state to state. And of course, the impact varies from business to business. So those are the three things that we recommend doing to protect your organization. Consider a rebrand, stay in touch with the legal counsel, and tie your efforts to business outcome. Again, some of the statistics we showed you earlier can do that for you. So where did this all come from? Where did this start? With the Trump administration. What's the latest on that? It's hard to miss some of the statistics that have come out in the last week because Trump recently, his second term passed the 100-day mark. So there was a lot of polling going on. And in general, his polling numbers are the worst since World War II. That's 80 years. That's a long time. He is broadly unpopular, right or wrong, across the American populace. 75%, I believe this is a USA Today poll, 75% of people disagree with his management of the economy. And theoretically, that's why he was elected. So even his two biggest things that he campaigned on, the economy and immigration, both are wildly unpopular. Now, the reason this is important, he's a lame duck. He cannot run for a third term. But I would contend he's a lame duck because when someone is that unpopular, people in his own party, it's very important to them. They want to get reelected. He loses political capital when that happens. And he has committed a number of unforced errors that are distracting to the administration, namely the tariffs and how he's handled immigrations. That administration doesn't have a lot of effort to focus time and energy to focus on this issue right now. Early on, Trump had said that he was going to have his attorney general pick 7 for-profit companies to sue for their DEI efforts. Hasn't happened. It's been an empty threat so far. Not only that, the administration currently has more than 200 lawsuits against it, many of them involving DEI. and many of them involving powerful players. There are 19 states that have jointly filed a lawsuit against Trump and the DEI efforts. It's 19 states. A separate lawsuit involves higher education institutions across the United States. So it'll be interesting to see how these efforts play out. But a lot of court rulings, including those in the Supreme Court, many of those justices were appointed by him. The Supreme Court has ruled against Trump. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. But I don't think there's a lot of bandwidth, with Signalgate and the low polling numbers and this and that. There isn't a lot of time and energy that can be devoted to this effort right now. Shaima, what else would you like to add on those topics?
I would say that, despite the focus being shifted a bit away from DEI bans and whatnot in the States, still DEI initiatives are right now being measured with the same scrutiny as any other business function. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It gives you an opportunity to demonstrate the value of what you're offering. What we've seen work is three main things: linking your inclusion efforts to retention, engagement, and performance metrics. Two, embedding inclusion into the core workflows, not just treating it as something separate. And using tools that are low cost, high impact, and easy to adopt into the workflow of your company.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And we'll just talk briefly about how we can help you, and then we'd like to open it up to questions. Bear with me 1 second. So as you may or may not know, one of our main things we offer here is the diversity calendar. It's very appropriate for this current era for three reasons. It's low risk, it is highly effective, and it's pretty low investment cost. One of the things that companies are struggling with now is the financial impact of tariffs. So even if they wish to continue their DEI efforts, they might be having their budgets cut, which is unfortunate. So we'd like to offer you a low risk, high impact, low cost way of continuing the work. This is important work. What you're seeing here is our free trial page. We'll put this in the chat. We have these are just some jumping off points. We have a global version of the calendar. We have a United States centric. We have a Canada centric. And what this does, and the way this builds inclusion into your workplace is, for example, one of our associates is on this meeting right now. A big shout out to Wendy Russell. Wendy is Jewish. She appreciates the fact that we know what the most important Jewish holidays are. Hint, it's not Hanukkah. And not only that, but we actually know what to say when it's Passover. This is a way of weaving a little bit of inclusion into the workplace. People in the United States, most people would appreciate not having to work on Christmas Day or the 4th of July. And this is giving that same respect and consideration to other cultures and religions. But it builds in learning. As you'll see, here you can find out how to pronounce the holiday. Here are belonging tips, specifically for your Jewish colleagues and customers. Here are dietary considerations, so that if you're having a meal with somebody who's Jewish, you wouldn't take them to a catfish restaurant. This would give you hints on what would be appropriate for dining with your Jewish associates. And going back to this concept of word choice, one of the reasons our team has put out this sister company is to give our customers a choice. We have some dear friends who work for the US government. A little tricky for them to work with us right now. So we're giving them a brand name, an alternate concept. And this statistic right here is true of the diversity calendar and Belong 365. 4 out of 5 employees report feeling more included at organizations using the diversity calendar or Belong 365. And what Belong 365 is, it's a version of our calendar, reimagined as an engagement calendar, and with micro-learning on all topics added in. The micro-learning could be on time management skills. It could be effective workplace communication skills. So that's what this tool is. Oh, and very happy to report to you, there's no software for you to download. You just add it into your existing Office 365 or Google Workspace, whichever you use, or you can use it as a standalone web tool. No additional software to download. So we encourage you can contact us through Diversity Resources or Belong 365. Shaima, if you have a moment, let's give them an email address to contact us. We're happy to help you with this or any other needs. All right, and with that said, why don't we open it up to questions? What amazing questions do we have from our lovely audience?
Please submit your questions in the chat and we'll go through them. While we wait for you to submit your questions, I would want to mention that inclusion isn't just for one group, it's for everyone. One of the mistakes some organizations make is making inclusion feel like exclusion, something for the few instead of something that lifts the whole culture of the company. And that doesn't really work. What does work is broadening the lens, so thinking beyond race or gender to veterans, caregivers, neurodivergent employees, and all of these are covered in our calendar. Second would be inviting all employees into the conversation and not just affinity groups. Everyone needs to be included. And the third part would be providing learning resources that meet people where they are. So something that's accessible, relevant, practical. And again, that's something that we do offer through our product. We do have learning resources that are super accessible and relevant to everyone, really. So, and with that, we can start taking your questions. Eric, how do you measure engagement and retention in a homogeneous industry where the dominant group reports satisfaction, but the underrepresented voices are often lost? Retention metrics as a whole speak to leadership. So how do you speak to the importance of the underrepresented?
Wow, well, that's a fantastic question. And that, now Shaima had a great point here a moment ago. Like our calendar, if somebody's a white, straight male of Christian heritage, they're going to find plenty to resonate with in the calendar. There's Black History Month, but there's Polish Heritage Month, there's Italian Heritage Month, there's Irish Heritage Month, there's German American Heritage Day, there's Tartan Day, which celebrates Scottish heritage, there's Men's Health Awareness Month, etc. Okay, so as Shaima mentioned, inclusion means everybody. However, it does mean, so somebody, for example, I think in the United States, maybe 1 to 2% of the population is Hindu. And by the way, to our friends not in the United States, I apologize for using statistics about the United States. It just happens to be where we're based. But if 1 to 2% of your population is Hindu, and actually I believe the second largest religion in the United States is Judaism, and it's maybe 2.5% of the population. So you're talking, the largest religions are a very small percentage of the population. However, if you leave out that one person, that one group, they're going to notice. And I know a few years ago, an employee from one of our customers very meekly asked us, would you mind adding Jehovah's Witness? We have one event per year. Would you mind add? We're like, yes, thank you for letting us know. So as part of the onboarding process, we'll customize your calendar for you. And we give advice and recommendations, and we recommend having all religions. Because even if you have one person who's LDS, or one person who's Jehovah's Witness, or one person who's Baha'i, they need to feel seen and represented. So that slice of your workforce that isn't seen. I remember one of our customers, within 24 hours, they sent us an email. One of their employees was Hindu. He said, I have never seen one of my employers recognize Pongal before. I feel so included. So you don't have to do that through us, but just in that way, all those people who are religiously diverse or culturally diverse, to somehow acknowledge them throughout the course of the year, I think you'll see engagement and retention of that group increase. What else?
Yeah. If I would just add, you can, also disaggregate the data by race, gender, role. Averages don't really tell the full story usually. You can use anonymous pulse checks to surface honest feedback. And you can also look at advancement and not just retention. Are people who are underrepresented progressing in their roles or just staying where they are? And for leadership, it's about risk and value. So ignoring gaps can lead to reputational risk and missed talent opportunities. So addressing them builds stronger teams.
That's exactly right. Even our small little company, we're a team of 14. A few years ago, I was on a meeting. I was like, oh, a lot of us kind of look alike. We better have a variety of voices, and generationally, gender, culturally, etc., because the world is diverse. The United States is diverse, whatever. And you're only going to understand these groups that maybe don't get as much of a spotlight if that voice is at the table, if that makes sense. So, gosh, we encourage all kinds of voices and feedback so that we can understand the world. I only see the world through my lens. I really need to see it through the lens of many people with different experiences. What else, Shaima?
Thanks, Rick. We have a question about microlearnings. They just want you to speak more about it on Belong 365.
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. The microlearnings will be available as a standalone suite. It can be on your LMS or our LMS. That means we can send you the files, you host them on an LMS if you have that or not. They do include an interactive quiz at the end. We are finding an increasing trend away from what might be called full-length learning, like 20-minute course, more to microlearning, 3-minute course. There are a variety of providers out there. We hope that ours are expertly researched and of higher quality. And a nice thing too is they can be directly integrated into your diversity calendar. So for example, if it's Pride Month, right there is a 3-minute micro-learning course on LGBT sensitivity. And I encourage you can send an email to me. My email address is Eric, ERICH, @diversityresources.com. Alternatively, you can email sales@diversityresources.com. We'd be happy to set you up with a free trial.
We do have a few more questions. We are running a little bit over, but if you're able to stay, we welcome you to. So Eric will just take a couple more questions, and if we miss anybody, we'll get back to you through email. Has Diversity Resources given any thought to changing its DBA name, which would allow state and government-funded entities to purchase? And I believe that's about Belong 365, Eric.
What a wonderful question, and the answer is yes. We are here to help. So whatever you need, we can deliver to you what we've shown to you, whether it's the micro learning, whether it is a product called Belong 365. It can be, you would receive an invoice from this business. Your emails would come from this business. The product lives on this website. That's part of the reason we created this company, is to have some linguistic flexibility. And we are thinking in particular of our friends at the federal government and others who have been impacted. We are careful with this to design a product that will be compliant and low or no risk. And you'll notice down below, we're speaking to some of the people that we can help with Belong 365. So this is a way to continue parts of the work in a way that is low or no risk if you're in federal government, if you receive federal funds, state level, etc.
We did have a follow-up that I can just quickly address. Belong 365 is not a part of Diversity Resources. It's led by the same team. However, they are two separate companies, if that's of concern. But we do offer the same products. And we can take one more question. Eric, someone said there are various states that have direct objections to DEI trainings. However, these trainings help open minds. So how do we disperse the information when now a fraction of our staff join the meetings?
Okay, to understand your question correctly, are you saying I believe you're saying you previously had more people at meetings and now you have fewer people at meetings. Okay. That is a great question. So one word we like to use is the word belonging. In any phase of my life, I've wanted to feel like I fit in, like I belong. Everyone wants to belong. And another word that's very important, and I believe we've recently done some research on this, is engagement. People want to feel they contribute to the workplace, that they're seen and heard, etc. So those are a couple words. Belonging and engagement are not the result of a once-a-year training session, or you have a motivational speaker come in. They're the result of actions and statements made on a regular basis, ideally on a daily basis. I think the best way to continue to radiate that message out, the way a company deploys our product is through its existing platforms, how it communicates with its existing with its employees. For most of our customers, it's Microsoft 360, Office 365, Outlook, SharePoint, Teams, Viva, Engage. However you communicate with your employees, I suggest you continue to radiate that message out to your employees through your high traffic means. So that could be something like having an email signature that reinforces a certain message, or having something on your intranet, or if you use Viva Engage or Work Vivo, two very similar names, similar products. However you communicate with your employees, continue to radiate out those messages. And there are a variety of topics that you can address that aren't so controversial. Okay, so tomorrow is May. One of the big celebrations during the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So before COVID, 1 out of 5 Americans had anxiety. That was before COVID. That was before the current, political uncertainty. So 20% of Americans presently have anxiety. 1 out of 3 Americans will be diagnosed with clinical depression in their lifetime. So mental health awareness is something that, it does not discriminate based upon gender, race, age, etc. It applies. I've recovered from depression and anxiety myself. So that is a topic that people can resonate with broadly. As Shaima mentioned earlier, we have a lot of veterans content. That veterans content was added on behalf of one of our amazing customers, Amazon. Amazon is continuing the work. Veterans are increasingly seen as a facet of diversity. I've never been in a combat situation. That experience is very different from mine. It's very important for me to understand their experience and how it differs from mine so they can be included. So I would pick some, and then like July is French American Heritage Month. There are ways to reinforce the beautiful differences that we have and how to celebrate them in a way that makes all feel included. I hope that makes sense. And if I didn't answer your question, shoot me an email and we can have a follow-up dialogue.
Yeah. I would just add, if the traditional DEI training is becoming the issue. You know, you can offer on-demand, bite-sized content, things that are short, like short videos, podcasts, stories people can access on their own terms, and just in general, avoiding politically charged terms. You can just, you know, frame the content around shared values and focus on everyday relevance. So it doesn't have to focus on DEI, but the message overall will still remain the same.
Yeah, great point, Shaima. And a lot of the analysis that one has seen in the news in recent months, some of it's really interesting. And, you know, I won't necessarily agree with all the analysis out there about DEI, but some reputable news organizations had an article, something to the effect of DEI, what DEI got wrong. Okay, well, listen, you know, the Wright brothers invented airplanes 110 years ago. Thank goodness we've continued to make airplanes better. DEI can continue to evolve. That's okay. And that's something we put a lot of thought into. And to me, the number one most important thing in being inclusive is word choice, you know? So today is the last day of April. One of the diversity themes for the month of April is around autism. And that monthly celebration used to be called Autism Awareness Month. It's now called Autism Acceptance Month. And that is a choice made by that diversity group. That's their prerogative. They get to choose what language works for them. So I think it's about language choice. And we're always putting thought into this, and we're trying to go back to basics. You know, if I'm at a party and I'm speaking with somebody and I see someone else over there who has no one to talk to, I invite them into the conversation. That's just being socially kind. But when you do that in the workplace, when you do that with your customers, it's also, not only is it kind, but it's profitable. So that's how we're rethinking this. Like, how can everybody be part of the dialogue? How can everybody be included? We're not putting special spotlights on this person or that person. It's really bringing everyone together, making everyone feel like they're an important part of this divine puzzle. And
I was planning on that being the last question, but there's a follow-up, and I think it's related, so we could just answer that one, Eric. Someone is asking about why companies have decided to roll back or dismantle DEI. What are the benefits of them doing that, since the data supports DEI?
All right, that's a philosophical question, and I'm going to go to a spiritual answer. Fear. And fear, one might say fear means false evidence appearing real. It can also mean fudge everything and run, right? So fear, that's definitely what caused this. If Kamala Harris had been elected, this wouldn't be happening. The opposite of fear, there are two opposites of fear that are kind of different. One is love, and one is faith. This is what we do every day. This is how we earn our living. Our entire team still remains. In fact, we've hired 2 new people. We've had to practice a lot of faith and a lot of love. So business is definitely about numbers. It's about strategy, okay? But it's also about, all businesses depend on people. All customers are people. I think it's choosing faith, choosing love instead of fear. There's been a lot of bluster, a lot of threats that have not been carried through. Some of them may be even undone. You know, at certain times, the current administration, they lay people off and then a judge forces them to hire them all back the next week. It'll be interesting to see if a couple months down the road, all the DEI people in the federal government have to be hired back. We don't know. You know, and that's one thing, is we do not get to know the future. We just have to take things day by day, and we're not running away. This business, this work is important. It's here to stay. And I think companies, you know, that's where you can change the name of your efforts a little bit. You can talk to your lawyers, but continue the work. Look what happened to Target. And there's some other bigger companies. They dialed back their efforts and they got punished. It's a tricky time, because if 65% of people, of Americans, are in favor of DEI, well, you want to keep them happy, but 35% are opposed, you want to keep them happy too. It's kind of walking that middle line, but continuing the work. That's my advice.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this session was useful and helpful and provided information that you can use in your organization. We will send a recording of this session tomorrow if you'd like to review it or show your colleagues. And if you are interested in discussing more about our products, please do reach out. I did put in the emails and the free trial in the chat. I will also send it with the recording tomorrow. If you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out either to Eric directly at his email or to the emails that I put in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have an inclusive day. Thank you, Shaima. Shukran.